Paul went in, as was his custom, and on 3 Sabbath days he reasoned with them from the Scriptures, explaining and proving that it was necessary for the Christ to suffer and to rise from the dead, and saying, "This Jesus, whom I proclaim to you, is the Christ." And some of them were persuaded and joined Paul and Silas, as did a great many of the devout Greeks, and not a few of the leading women. But those who believed not were jealous, and, gathering a crowd, set the city in an uproar, crying, "These men who have turned the world upside down have come here also. And they are all acting against the decrees of Caesar, saying that there is another king, Jesus."
Okay, so the elephant in the room. What are we doing with these things in front of our face? Microphones.
I know what you mean. What are we doing here? We are discussing, over time, main tenets. I think you in a former conversation called them structural walls of faith. And I think it was Keller, perhaps talking about John Stott, referred to it as muscular ecumenism. These main central tenets that we drill down on and look at from various perspectives that really support the faith and have through the millennia. And I think that is what we are doing.
Yeah.
Week
I
in,
think so
week
too.
out,
So
month in, month out.
That's a good thing.
We're on the same page.
We agree on that.
That's good.
Yeah, I call them load-bearing tenets.
Load-bearing tenets.
Yeah.
That's good. And what are those?
Those parts of the Christian worldview on which much of the rest of the structure bears, or to put it another way, that tenet, that doctrine, that teaching bears the weight of much of the rest of the Christian worldview. So, for example, in the first, we're going to do seasons, right? 6, 8, 10 episodes, whatever it takes per season, where we're going to take one tenet of the Christian worldview and look at it from every theological angle that we possibly can, and think also, again, about the practical application thereof throughout that season, right? And so, for example, the first one is the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Probably no bigger pillar holding more up than Jesus's resurrection, right? So we'll look at it from the Old Testament. We'll look at it from, we want to know the historicity of the events described in the Gospels and in Paul and so forth. And then how has the doctrine been understood throughout the ages? And then equally, because it's a load-bearing tenet, how does the resurrection impact our understanding of X, Y, and Z throughout the rest of Christianity? Because I think, obviously, Christians believe in the resurrection, but maybe it's not as common to appreciate how wide-reaching the resurrection of Christ is for the rest of our belief system. And so that's the goal. And then the next season, we'll pick another, and we'll move down the line.
How do you determine a load-bearing tenet?
A load-bearing tenet is, so three criteria are in my mind. Number one, so which tenets will we discuss on these seasons? Number one, load-bearing, as I just described, informing much of the rest of Christian worldview, right? That's number one. Number two, quite related, it must be central to the biblical storyline, right? The secondary, tertiary, peripheral, supporting doctrines of the biblical meta-narrative, very important, obviously. But for our purposes, we'll just stick to those ones that are really sort of in the main flow from Genesis to Revelation. And then thirdly, again, related, have impact on others, right? So how does the resurrection of Christ influence our understanding of union with Christ or regeneration or the sacraments or whatever it may be, right? So there's this broad effect and shadow, as it were, a good kind of shadow that these doctrines cast across the rest of, again, doctrine and ministry, and thinking, therefore, about how we go about ministry in the world.